Somalis in the United States are facing a new crackdown from the Trump administration. But this time, the focus is not just immigration, it's citizenship itself and naturalization files of Somali-American citizens. The goal is to identify cases where citizenship may have been obtained through fraud. The administration says it is reviewing those cases now, and Minnesota has become the focal point. Federal officials have described Minnesota's Somali community as a hub for alleged fraud involving federal social service programs. The review targets specific cases with potential fraud allegations and not the community as a whole. The Justice Department has charged 98 individuals in a wide-ranging fraud probe, and Attorney General Pam Bondi said 85 of them are of Somali descent. Trump has claimed that up to 90% of Minnesota's fraud cases are linked to Somali immigrants who entered the country illegally. The investigation has also spurred political responses. Republican Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota took the issue a step further, publicly calling for the denaturalization and deportation of Somalis convicted of fraud.
I have 3 words regarding Somalis who have committed fraud against American taxpayers. Send them home. If they're here illegally, deport them immediately. If they're naturalized citizens, revoke their citizenship and deport them quickly thereafter. If we need to change the law to do that, I will. Our nation will not tolerate those who take advantage of our charity and refuse to assimilate into our culture.
What started as a local fraud investigation in Minnesota has now exploded into a national immigration debate, and the United States President is paying close attention. Millions of public dollars meant to help vulnerable communities are allegedly missing, and the fallout is reaching far beyond courtrooms. Now, calls for reviewing citizenship and immigration policies are growing louder, raising serious questions about oversight, accountability, and civil liberties. Is this about protecting taxpayers, or could the response reshape how immigration enforcement works across the country? The answers could affect not just one state, but entire communities nationwide.
A sweeping fraud case unfolding in Minnesota has moved far beyond courtrooms and audit reports, igniting a national political debate and drawing the attention of the United States president known for hardline immigration views. What began as an investigation into the misuse of public funds has now become a flashpoint in discussions about immigration vetting, citizenship oversight, and the balance between national security and civil liberties. At the center of the controversy are allegations that millions of dollars intended for social programs were diverted through a complex network of nonprofits and contractors operating in Minnesota. Investigators allege that public funds meant to feed children and support vulnerable communities were instead misappropriated through inflated invoices, false documentation, and shell operations. The case has prompted federal scrutiny because it involves taxpayer money, interstate financial flows, and potential weaknesses in oversight mechanisms that extend far beyond one state. Why this case matters nationally is not only the scale of the alleged fraud, but the way it intersects with immigration policy. Minnesota is home to one of the largest Somali immigrant and Somali-American populations in the United States. As investigators examined organizational leadership structures and funding pathways, questions arose about governance, accountability, and whether existing compliance systems were sufficient. These questions quickly migrated from financial regulation into the political arena, where immigration enforcement has long been a contentious issue. The United States president responded by framing the case as evidence of broader systemic failures. Public statements and campaign messaging pointed to the scandal as justification for re-examining citizenship pathways, refugee admissions, and the vetting process for humanitarian programs. Calls were made for stricter reviews of naturalization cases linked to organizations accused of wrongdoing, as well as expanded audits of immigration-related benefits. Supporters argue that such measures are necessary to protect public funds and restore trust. Critics counter that using a fraud investigation to justify sweeping immigration reviews risks conflating criminal behavior with lawful migration. This response aligns closely with a broader immigration agenda that emphasizes enforcement, scrutiny, and deterrence. Throughout previous political cycles, the United States president promoted tighter borders, enhanced background checks, and a reduction in refugee admissions. The Minnesota case has been used as a concrete example to reinforce those policy positions, especially among voters concerned about government spending and accountability. In this context, The fraud allegations are no longer just a legal matter. They have become a symbol in a much larger political narrative. Crucially, Somali immigrants and Somali-Americans are connected to the case largely through geography and community presence, not through collective culpability. Minnesota's Somali community is diverse, spanning generations, professions, and political views. Many community leaders have emphasized that the alleged actions of a limited group should not reflect on an entire population. Advocacy organizations have pointed out that Somali-Americans have contributed significantly to local economies, public service, and civic life, and that broad-brush narratives risk fueling misunderstanding and fear. Legal experts warn that expanding citizenship reviews based on association rather than individual evidence raises serious constitutional concerns. Citizenship revocation, known as denaturalization, is legally possible but historically rare and tightly constrained. Courts have consistently required clear proof of fraud or misrepresentation during the naturalization process itself. Using unrelated criminal cases as a basis for widespread reviews could face significant legal challenges and lengthy court battles. From a humanitarian perspective, the rhetoric surrounding the scandal has created anxiety within immigrant communities. Refugees and naturalized citizens often worry that policy shifts driven by political pressure could lead to prolonged uncertainty, increased surveillance, or administrative delays. Community organizations report increased demand for legal guidance as families seek reassurance about their status and rights. These concerns highlight the human impact of policy debates that are often framed in abstract terms. There are also international implications. Somalia remains a fragile state with deep ties to its diaspora in the United States. Any perception that Somali-Americans are being collectively scrutinized could strain people-to-people relations and complicate diplomatic engagement. Historically, diaspora communities have played a key role in humanitarian aid, development, and conflict recovery. Policies that alienate these communities may have unintended consequences beyond domestic politics. Looking to history, major fraud investigations have often triggered broader policy responses. Past cases involving financial misconduct and social programs led to tighter regulations, improved auditing, and revised eligibility rules. However, experts note that effective reforms typically focus on institutional weaknesses rather than targeting specific communities. When enforcement measures drift toward identity-based scrutiny, they tend to face legal setbacks and public backlash. As the Minnesota case continues to move through the legal system, several questions remain unresolved. Will the courts uphold aggressive citizenship reviews tied indirectly to fraud investigations? Can policymakers strengthen oversight without undermining civil liberties? And how will political leaders balance the demand for accountability with the need to avoid stigmatizing entire communities? What is clear is that this scandal has become more than a state-level legal case. It has evolved into a national test of how the United States approaches immigration enforcement in moments of crisis. The outcome will shape not only policy debates, but also the lived experience of millions of immigrants who call the country home.